Imagine this. You've just won the lottery. Not the modest scratch ticket kind, but the life-altering, camera-flashing, multi-million-dollar kind. Your name floods the news, distant relatives crawl from shadows, and your phone won't stop vibrating with congratulations. For the first time in your life, the weight of financial worry is gone. You're free, utterly gloriously free. You can buy the mansion, fly first class across continents, quit the job that's been silently draining you for years. You have access to everything you were told would make you happy. And yet, 3 months later, you wake up and feel nothing. Or worse, an emptiness heavier than anything you knew when you were broke. The food tastes bland, the laughter of friends feels distant. Even your reflection in the mirror looks unfamiliar, as if someone else has stepped into your life. What just happened? You did everything right. You chased what society glorifies as the pinnacle of happiness, and you reached it. But instead of bliss, you found boredom. Instead of peace, restlessness. You sit in your marble kitchen sipping imported coffee and wonder, why does it still ache? Now imagine this next twist. You meet someone on a park bench. They wear old shoes, torn at the soles. Their coat is patched, their hands calloused, but their eyes, those eyes burn with something you can't name. They speak with stillness. They aren't rushing toward anything, not craving, not panicking. Somehow they radiate a peace you've never tasted. You, the one with everything, feel a strange longing to feel as alive as this stranger who owns nothing. Why? Why does happiness seem to slip through your fingers the moment you grasp it? Why does it retreat like a mirage, always shimmering just ahead? Once you get the next promotion, once you fall in love, once you escape this town, is it possible that happiness itself is a trick of the mind? A story we've been told to keep us moving forward, or worse? What if happiness isn't just elusive? What if it's an illusion? This question is not new. Long before you, before smartphones and self-help influencers, before capitalism and corporate wellness retreats, a German philosopher sat alone in dim candlelight and pondered the very same torment. His name was Arthur Schopenhauer, and to him, the idea of happiness wasn't just flawed, it was a lie we chase from cradle to grave like moths around a flame. He wrote not in the language of motivation, but in the language of pain. He didn't promise fulfillment, he questioned its very existence. And his question still echoes like a scream muffled beneath the polite din of our modern world. What if the very pursuit of happiness guarantees suffering? Take a moment, let that sink in. What if the more you try to be happy, the more unhappy you become? What if the problem isn't that you haven't found it, but that it was never real to begin with? Think about your life, the fleeting highs, the way each triumph fades into the background noise of your next desire, the way peace always lies just beyond the horizon of your next achievement. You don't feel full, you feel haunted by the next thing. Schopenhauer saw this not as failure, but as design. He believed that behind every smile, every ambition, every hopeful glance toward the future, there lurked the will. Not will as in determination, but the metaphysical will to live, to want, to crave. And this will, he argued, was blind, insatiable, unreasonable. It gnawed at you from within, convincing you that happiness lies just beyond the next bend until you arrive and find another bend. It was not a bug in the system, it was the system. So the question returns, fiercer this time, like a beast growing aware of its own trap. If happiness is an illusion, what are we actually chasing? And what happens to a life built entirely around a ghost? You've felt it, haven't you? In the stillness between goals, in the uneasy silence after victory, in the dull ache of a Sunday afternoon when nothing's wrong, and yet nothing feels right. That unnameable sense that something is missing, that you are missing, that no matter how much you consume, conquer, or create, the hunger beneath never dies. Schopenhauer didn't look away from this abyss. He stared straight into it, and what he found there would change everything. But first, we must understand, where did this illusion begin? What ancient wound birthed this relentless pursuit? What hidden machinery keeps us running, always running, towards something that vanishes as soon as we arrive? Let us go deeper. Let us uncover the roots. Only then can we begin to see the truth. Only then can we begin to awaken. Shall we descend? It begins before you're even conscious. You're born into a world already humming with commands. Be happy, smile, achieve, accumulate, win. No one sits you down and says it directly, but it's there. In the lullabies that promise everything will be okay. In the cartoons where the hero always gets the reward. In the faces of adults who praise your success and frown at your tears. You begin to inhale this unspoken rule with every breath. Your purpose is to be happy. Anything less is failure. But there's something darker underneath this cultural lullaby, something invisible yet brutally persistent. It is the will. Schopenhauer called it der Wille zum Leben, the will to live, but not life as flourishing or awareness. Life is craving, a blind, primal drive that pulses beneath all existence. You don't choose to want. You are wanting, he said. You are the embodiment of desire's hunger. Before you even form thoughts, you're reaching, crying, demanding. This drive, this unthinking, uncontrollable will is your original inheritance. To Schopenhauer, this will is not noble. It's not enlightened. It's monstrous in its relentlessness. The will doesn't care about your joy. It cares only that you want again, and again, and again. He wrote, all striving springs from want, from deficiency, from dissatisfaction with one's condition. Which means happiness isn't a goal. It's the bait, the lure, the mirage that keeps the will moving. And the worst part, the moment desire is fulfilled, the will doesn't die. It mutates. The joy of fulfillment is just a flicker, immediately consumed by new dissatisfaction. Have you ever wanted something so badly you felt sick with anticipation, only to get it and feel vaguely disappointed a week later? That's the will. That's the loop. That's the prison. Now enter the mind. Your psyche, according to thinkers like Carl Jung, is a battlefield. There's the conscious mind, the part of you that plans, dreams, makes New Year's resolutions. But beneath that lies the unconscious, a vast, shadowy engine fueled by fear, trauma, instincts, and, yes, desire. Jung called this the shadow self. It's not evil. It's just the parts of you you've buried in order to function. And this shadow, too, is ruled by the will. When you tell yourself, I'll be happy once I lose weight, or once I prove myself, I'll finally feel good enough. It's the shadow whispering from the dark. It speaks in cravings you mistake for purpose. Now add another voice. Society. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, imagined a world where people are kept docile not through violence, but through pleasure. Constant entertainment, endless distractions, a drug called soma to smooth over any sharp edge of pain. But Huxley wasn't describing a dystopia. He was predicting your world. Today, your will is exploited by systems designed to keep you forever unsatisfied. Social media algorithms feed you images of others living happier lives. Advertising tells you the cure for your pain is one more product. Productivity culture tells you to monetize your hobbies. Even your healing is marketed back to you. Wellness retreats, mindfulness apps, spiritual influencers selling transcendence in 3 easy steps. It's all the same engine. Want more, be more, fix yourself. Because if you were ever truly content, you'd stop buying, stop chasing, stop performing. Schopenhauer believed that suffering wasn't just part of life. It was life's very core. Every moment of peace is just a pause between waves of craving. He even said that happiness is merely the temporary cessation of pain. Not the presence of joy, but the absence of suffering, a silence between storms. Can you feel the weight of that? It's a devastating thought, but also doesn't it ring true? That after every happy moment there's a hollowness, a subtle tension as if your soul knows this won't last. That no matter how beautiful the sunset, how perfect the kiss, some part of you is already mourning its end. Nietzsche, though he despised Schopenhauer's pessimism, agreed on one crucial point: life is not a fairy tale. Man, he wrote, does not strive for happiness. Only the Englishman does that. What he meant was, the obsession with happiness is not human nature. It's a cultural infection. And the more we chase it, the more fragile we become. So here you are, caught in the crossfire. Your biology says, want more. Your culture says, you must be happy. Your psyche says, you are not enough. And meanwhile, your spirit, if you still listen to it, whispers something else entirely, a quieter truth you're not sure how to name yet. This is the hidden machinery Schopenhauer tried to expose. The labyrinth beneath your every mood, goal, disappointment. Not because he wanted to depress you, but because he believed that only through brutal honesty could we begin to see. And perhaps even to escape. But we're not ready for escape yet. Not before we understand the cost of staying asleep. Because there is a toll. And we are paying it every day. Let's go there now. Let's look at what this illusion of happiness is doing to us and to everything we love. Let's examine the unseen consequences before it's too late. You wake up and scroll, not out of intention, but habit. Your fingers move before your mind does, flicking through curated smiles, vacation photos, filtered lifestyles wrapped in pixel-perfect joy. Everyone else seems happy, productive, fulfilled, beautiful, and you're just lying in bed staring at a glowing lie that whispers you're behind. You're not enough. Fix it. You don't realize it, but something ancient inside you reacts. A neurochemical tug in the amygdala, your brain's fear and survival center, releases a subtle threat. You are not keeping up with the tribe. This is the beginning of the unseen consequence, not in the collapse of society or grand existential breakdowns, but in these tiny daily erosions of your self-worth, a slow acid drip against the soul. Schopenhauer warned that we are like a man running downhill who cannot stop himself. But today, we're not just running, we're being pulled. By machines, by markets, by metrics designed not to nourish us, but to exploit the will. At the core of this problem is a misunderstanding of what happiness even is. The modern world treats it as a product, something you can gain through purchase, status, optimization. But psychologically, happiness is a fleeting neurological state, a chemical cocktail sparked by novelty, dopamine, and momentary safety. And once that state fades, your brain, wired by evolution to detect danger more than peace, returns to scanning for what's missing. This is not a malfunction. It's how you survived lions and plagues and betrayal. But in a world where survival is no longer the question, your brain's vigilance turns inward. Am I successful enough? Attractive enough? Loved enough? You begin to consume not to live, but to silence the discomfort. And so, the treadmill begins. Psychologist Barry Schwartz calls it the paradox of choice. The more options we have, the more dissatisfied we become. We believe freedom is the ability to choose. But when every choice is framed as a potential source of happiness, not choosing perfectly feels like failure. That restaurant wasn't good enough. That partner didn't make me feel enough. That job didn't fulfill me. You spiral into the illusion that somewhere out there, there's a perfect scenario in which happiness will finally lock into place. But here's the sinister part. It never does. Because happiness, as we've been taught to conceive it, is always contingent. When I get X, then I'll be happy. And once X arrives, the goalpost shifts. This is the cognitive bias known as the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to return to a baseline level of dissatisfaction no matter how much we gain. You're promoted, the dopamine rush hits, you celebrate. A week later, it's just your job again. You fall in love. Fireworks explode. You're euphoric. 6 months later, you're fighting about dishes and screen time. You move cities, reinvent yourself. The change feels intoxicating till the same anxieties return, dressed in new scenery. So what's the cost? It's not just disappointment, it's fragmentation of the self. When happiness is portrayed as the ultimate goal, any form of pain becomes pathologized. You feel sad, you must be broken. You feel anxious, medicated. You feel lost, that's unacceptable. Consume faster, smile more, try yoga, hustle harder. But pain is not the enemy, it's information. Schopenhauer insisted that suffering is the condition of existence, not an error in the code. And when we flee from suffering at all costs, we begin to amputate the parts of ourselves that are trying to speak truth. The result? A world of people who wear smiles like armor and collapse when no one is watching. A society of performative happiness and silent despair. Depression rates rise. Anxiety disorders proliferate. Suicides increase among the most successful demographics, all while we continue to post, consume, and pursue the next fleeting high. Even spirituality gets commodified. Mindfulness becomes a feature in corporate wellness programs. Gratitude journals are sold as tools for peak performance. Meditation is framed as a hack to be more productive, not more aware. Even your soul is monetized. And all of it, every affirmation, every biohack, every promise of eternal bliss, feeds the illusion. Schopenhauer knew this trap well. He argued that the more we identify with our individual desires, the more we suffer. Because desire, once fulfilled, doesn't end. It replicates, a thousand-headed hydra. Every victory births new craving. Every contentment becomes stale. And so we remain prisoners of our own pursuit. Now imagine this scaling to the collective level. A society addicted to false promises of happiness is a society ripe for manipulation. Politicians offer utopias. Marketers sell dreams. Gurus promise enlightenment if you pay. People stop questioning the game because to admit it's rigged would mean confronting the terrifying possibility that we've been playing it wrong our entire lives. And perhaps you feel it now. The quiet panic, the flickering recognition that maybe, just maybe, you've been sold a beautiful lie that your chase for happiness has cost you something real, your stillness, your authenticity, your connection to a deeper, quieter truth you were taught to ignore. But here's the thing, this realization, though painful, is also the first key. To see the illusion is the beginning of awakening. To recognize the trap is the start of escape. But how do we rebel against something so deeply embedded? How do you reject a worldview that shaped everything from your goals to your identity? This isn't about giving up. It's about waking up. The next step is not comfort, it's revolution, not against the world, but against the lie that happiness is the goal. Let's begin the rebellion. You're standing at the edge of a mirror that never told the truth. Everything you've chased until now, every achievement, every validation, every golden moment where you thought, "This is it, I've made it," was built on a promise that never kept itself. And here you are, still hungry, still haunted, still wondering why the joy always slips through your fingers like smoke. So what now? Do you numb it? Do you double down on the pursuit, polish the mask, aim for more? Or do you do the unthinkable? Do you rebel? But what does rebellion even mean when the enemy isn't a dictator or a system, but a dream, a lie so convincing you've built your life around it? This is not a rebellion of fire and fists. This is an inward mutiny, a disobedience against the will itself. Schopenhauer did not believe freedom could be found through fulfilling desires. He believed it could only be found through denying them. Not out of nihilism, but as an act of liberation. The only real autonomy, he said, was to look a desire in the face and not obey. To say, "No, I will not chase the next thrill, the next illusion. I will stand still and witness what is real." And in this, he was not alone. Look to the ancient mystics, the Buddhists, who call this suffering dukkha and identify desire, tanha, as its root. The solution? Detachment, mindful awareness, acceptance that life is impermanent, that the self is not a fixed entity to be pleased, but a process to be witnessed. Or look to Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust and still said, "Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue." Meaning, joy is not something you hunt. It's something that emerges when you stop making it the object of your hunt. When you live with meaning, when you face suffering with integrity instead of avoidance. This is the rebellion. To stop chasing the high and start sitting with the hunger. To stop silencing pain and start listening to it. To reject the myth that comfort equals fulfillment. Ask yourself, what if the problem isn't that life is hard, but then you were told it shouldn't be? What if your sadness, your doubt, your restless longing are not signs of failure, but of truth? To break free, you must begin with a radical inversion. Stop seeing happiness as the goal and start seeing clarity as the goal. Clarity leads to self-knowledge. Self-knowledge leads to stillness. And stillness is the one place the will cannot reach. So how do you begin? 1. Disidentify from desire. This isn't repression, it's awareness. Next time you feel the pang of longing, be it for a person, a status, an object, pause, don't act, watch. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Not the surface want, but the wound beneath it, the fear, the insecurity, the story you've been telling yourself. Desire often masks unhealed pain. You don't just want love, you want to be seen. You don't just want wealth, you want safety. You don't just want praise, you want to believe you matter. And when you see that, something shifts. The craving loses its grip. 2. Embrace the void. You've been taught to fear emptiness. But emptiness is not death. It's silence. It's the pause where real awareness begins. The Buddhists call it shunyata, the space between forms where illusion dissolves. When you stop filling every moment with noise, consumption, distraction, you begin to feel something terrifying and true, your raw self. Let it speak. 3. Redefine meaning. Frankl taught that meaning is what saves us from despair, not pleasure. Meaning often comes through suffering, through love, through sacrifice, not through ease. Ask yourself, not what will make me happy, but what am I willing to suffer for? The answer to that question is where your real life begins. 4. Practice non-attachment, not apathy. This doesn't mean rejecting joy. It means refusing to be enslaved by it. You can love deeply, create art, pursue dreams. Just don't let them define your worth. Don't cling. Let beauty pass through you like music. Don't trap it. Let it echo. 5. Remember the shadow Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You will not find peace by chasing only light. You must befriend your inner void, your envy, your despair, your pettiness, your shame. Bring it to the surface, not to indulge it, but to own it, to reclaim the energy you've been using to hide it. This is real rebellion, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. And you won't be alone. There have always been those who walked this path, quietly, fiercely. The monk who owns nothing and radiates peace. The artist who creates not for fame, but truth. The philosopher who turns away from applause and toward the soul. These are not saints, they are warriors, not of violence, but of discipline. Warriors who said no to the will and found something deeper than pleasure. Stillness, awareness, presence, and maybe, just maybe, grace. You don't have to escape the world to find this. You can do it in traffic, in line at the grocery store, in the space between your breath. Every moment is an invitation to stop chasing and start being. The illusion doesn't break all at once. It cracks slowly. With each decision to face reality instead of escape it, with each act of courage that says, I will feel this fully, I will not run. And then one day you realize you are no longer desperate to be happy. You are at peace with being alive. And that is everything. But one question remains. If happiness was the illusion, what then is the truth? Not just a way out, but a way through. Not just rebellion, but revelation. You're almost there. Let's go to the very end. Let's uncover the final realization, the ultimate truth that changes everything. Imagine this. You're standing in a silent forest just before dawn. No phone, no music, no words. Just you, the hush of trees, and the raw hum of existence. You feel a strange sensation, something you can't name. It's not joy, it's not excitement, it's not even relief. It's deeper than that. It's the absence of striving, and for the first time in your life, you are not waiting for the next thing. No expectation, no craving, no need to become anything other than what you already are. This is not happiness, this is freedom. You've come all this way, across illusions, across the wasteland of false promises and compulsive desire, to reach a truth that doesn't scream, doesn't sell, and doesn't shine in neon. It waits quietly like a forgotten truth buried under centuries of noise. So what is it? Schopenhauer, with all his bleakness and brilliance, pointed toward it when he wrote, "The world is my representation," meaning reality is not something out there to be conquered or possessed. It is something unfolding through you. What you see, what you desire, what you suffer, it's all filtered through your mind, your conditioning, your projections. And if the world is your representation, then salvation isn't out there. It's in how you see. The final realization is not that happiness is an illusion. It's that the self you've been trying to satisfy doesn't even exist in the way you think it does. All along you thought there was a you at the center, an identity with stable wants, needs, goals. But if you look closely, radically, fearlessly, what do you find? Memories, fears, roles, masks, a shifting narrative, not a solid being. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Not because we're blank slates to fill with pleasure, but because the self is not a thing, but an activity, emotion, a story being rewritten each day. You were never meant to be someone. You were meant to realize you are no one, and in that emptiness discover freedom. The Buddhists call it anatta, non-self, a liberation from the exhausting burden of having to uphold an ego, a brand, an identity. And when that illusion fades, what's left? Stillness, witnessing, a radical acceptance of what is. You begin to see clearly. The pain you ran from was trying to wake you. The desires you chased were trying to sedate you. And underneath all of it, the frantic grasping, the endless climbing, was the truth you feared most, that nothing was ever missing. The hunger wasn't a flaw in your life. It was a symptom of believing you were separate from life itself. And when you stop resisting, when you stop trying to manipulate experience into pleasure and push pain out of frame, you start to merge, not in a mystical, abstract sense, but in a raw, cellular one. You feel the wind through you. You watch thoughts pass like weather. You look at others not as rivals or mirrors, but as fellow dreamers trapped in the same beautiful, aching illusion. And suddenly the game ends, not in despair, but in laughter. Because you see it now, don't you? All that effort, all that striving, all that suffering to reach something that was never outside of you. You weren't broken. You weren't late. You were just asleep, dreaming the same dream humanity has dreamed for centuries, that fulfillment lies ahead, that peace must be earned, that you must be improved, perfected, completed. But the truth? There is no future moment more whole than this one. Not because it's ideal, but because it's real, and reality, unfiltered, unflinching, unapologetic, is the very thing you've been seeking underneath every illusion of happiness. Schopenhauer hinted at this with his turn toward aesthetics, how art, music, and contemplation allow us temporary freedom from the will. In moments of pure beauty, he believed, the individual dissolves. The need to want disappears, and for a fleeting instant, you are simply being without agenda, without self. But you don't need a symphony or a painting to taste this. You just need presence. When you drink water, not to hydrate or optimize, but to feel it touch your throat. When you cry, not because something went wrong, but because something true broke through. When you hold someone, not to be needed, but to see them. These are the sacred rebellions. This is the deeper freedom Schopenhauer never quite said outright, but pointed towards like a philosopher screaming into the dark. It's not about rejecting happiness, it's about outgrowing it, transcending the narrow definition of pleasure and reward, and stepping into a wider field where every emotion is allowed, every moment is complete, and the self is not a prison but a passage. The final truth is this: you do not need to be happy, you need to be awake, because awakening is not comfort, it is clarity. It's the searing, luminous recognition that you were never incomplete, never late, never lost. You were just taught to search in all the wrong places. So now, stop. Breathe. Let the will quiet. Let the moment unfold without interference. And listen, not to me, not to a philosophy, but to the silence behind your thoughts, to the part of you that watches everything but grasps at nothing. That is not your ego. That is not your identity. That is not your pain. That is you, not as the person who needs to be happy, but as the presence that no longer fears not being. And once you taste that, even for a second, everything changes. The chase ends, and life finally begins.